This video is brought to you by Outdoor Staycations. In this video, I'm going to go over several techniques I've used to try and keep myself warm during the winter months. I've used styrofoam, bubble wrap, and several different types of heaters. I'll be pausing this video from time to time as I move the camera around. A major area of heat loss is, of course, your ceiling. As we know, heat rises. I have 3 ceiling ducts. And if you take a look carefully inside the duct, you're going to see it's nothing more than a plastic cover with no insulation around it as it closes. So again, as heat rises, what I've done is I've purchased blankets, and these particular blankets are sold on, well, you know, the big box store and Amazon. And the blankets have removable covers for washing. And to get a careful, tight fit, I've actually removed the handle from the lift mechanism and set it on top so I can find it in the springtime when I need to remove them. I found this drastically reduces the heat loss into my ceiling area. I also found during the mid of summer of July and August, my air conditioner can't keep up with the heat of Tennessee. So I also put them back in July and August on the hottest months, and found it makes my air conditioning a little bit easier. The second area I'm going to go into is the air conditioner. As you see, it's right over here. I do cut a piece of bubble wrap. I do put it over the air conditioner. The same thing as the ceiling duct. The heat rises into the air conditioner unit, which of course has compressors, coils, and again, it's only covered by a thin plastic covering on the outside of the trailer. Again, this reduces the heat loss up into your air conditioning system. I also insulate with just tape my 4 ducts that are in the house. Again, these are nothing more than ducts where the air conditioning comes out and blows down into my living area. But again, heat rises, will go into the ductwork, carry itself over to the air conditioner, and I lose it. These are temporary measures. I take them off as soon as spring hits, but during the July and August area, they're off, but during the January, February area, they're on. This part is hard to see because the sun is bright today, but over all my windows I put bubble wrap. This is the same bubble wrap I use for the air conditioner. What I've done is I've gone to, in this particular case, Walmart. I bought the widest rolls of bubble wrap that I can get, and I ran them down, cut them to fit, and I taped them all the way around the edge. When you do the taping, be very careful of a couple things. One is, don't get the tape on your paneling. It will start stripping off the finish off your paneling. I try and use duct tape. I've tried it one year using Gorilla Tape, and it left residue behind as I tried to pull it on up. I tried using regular plastic as it comes on a roll tape. And again, if I didn't get it off early enough, what it'll do is it'll dry onto your metal, and it'll again be hard to come off. I find duct tape worked well. I usually rip it in half to save a little bit on it, but it also fits nicer. And I've insulated all the windows in my unit. Again, what this creates is an extra bond layer. So you have your window, which has very little insulation, very little R value. You've just added the bubble wrap, which adds a little bit of R value. Then you have your enclosure, your window treatment. And again, another layer, and that's create like a triple barrier layer of just the cold permeating through into the interior of your unit. Behind the camera, you can't see it. I have a huge bay window. Imagine the amount of heat loss I have through that window. Again, bubble wrap helped it out a lot. My next layer of insulation, I used Styrofoam. They sell this at Home Depot. It comes in 2-foot by 4-foot long sheets, usually a package, I believe 8 or 10. I bought 2 packages. What I did is, behind me, I have the dinette table. I took the seat cushions off, took everything out of the storage unit underneath the seats, put a layer of the styrofoam down, put everything back in it again. I didn't lose any storage space. Underneath my sofa, it's a fold-out sleeper sofa. I did the same thing. I folded it out, laid sheets underneath the sofa itself, fit it from wall to wall as far as I can, folded it back up, and again, what this does is adds a little bit of insulation under the areas. I might not have mentioned that I went around and looked, and my particular slide out, even though my trailer is a 3-season trailer, Underneath my slide house is no insulation at all. It's just plywood with a small covering over it. I was surprised. I expected it to be insulated. It wasn't, so this adds about another layer of insulation over about 70% of it. I did not put this underneath where my feet is, underneath my dinette. I still wanted to use the dinette, but at least about 70–75% of it now has another layer of insulation. The best part of this is up in the front, up in my bed, we have a rise storage unit bed. I found it was always cold in the middle of the night getting into it. What I did is I put this, a small layer, across the entire bottom of the storage unit, put all my stuff back on it again like we discussed, and it raised the temperature of my bed about 20 degrees, so it's not nearly as cold when I get in it. I did find in the spring that I had to remove the insulation from the sofa and the dinette because there seemed to be a little moisture coming up through it with the hot and the cold of the nights. So I did remove it, but underneath the bed I've had no trouble with moisture, and I leave that year round. Finally, the last thing I do on the inside is underneath the door. I find I don't have a good weather strip underneath the door, so I do put a blanket. I roll up a towel underneath it during the night. I take it off during the day, but that as my last layer. So right now I discussed several different techniques for insulating the inside of your trailer. Right now I'll take you outside and show you some major heat loss points there. First major heat point loss outside happens to be your vent for over your stove. In my particular case, it is a flap where the wind gets up underneath it on gusty nights. My particular unit has two toggles which are able to close. So during the winter months I keep the toggles closed, and when my wife wants to cook something that might be a little bit smoky, I come out and I open it. So it covers it most of the time. If yours doesn't, you might try to use a piece of tape to close it off permanently during the cold winter months. This is a little awkward, but the next major, and this really is a major heat loss point, is your electric cord. If you notice when you put your electric cord in, there's a large gap around it. Well, this allows for the ease of putting the cord in and out, but also means on a cold winter night the wind just blows into it. So I took some of my bubble wrap and I've stuffed it in it and I closed it, and this eliminates a big major vent point from the cold outside to inside. Finally, this isn't actually a major one, but I do it anyways. This particular plate, which is your freshwater in plate, is nothing more than a little plastic piece that in my particular case sits underneath my refrigerator. And again, it's just a cold point where the outside cold air has very little insulation to the inside warmer air. So we'll cut a piece of bubble wrap and tape it to the outside of it. That should take care of the outside. We're going back inside. Next, I want to discuss electric heaters. Now of course, our heater does work, our propane heater does work, but I find it very noisy, especially when you're trying to watch TV at night. It happens to sit right behind my chair, goes on and off, it gets hot, cold, hot and cold. So I do have two electric heaters that I use. The first one I'm going to talk about is, and I'm going to bring the camera down a little bit to look at it, is a oil-filled. Now oil-fills are very safe. The elements are buried in an oil field, and there's no flame or hot coil going directly against it. It's safe. It does get warm, but it is probably the safest one out there. The advantage of this particular unit is that it has three settings. It has echo, low, and high. What it realistically means is it has three wattage settings. My particular Cougar, I have not an electric issue, but I only have two circuits throughout the entire interior of my unit. And one of them is my GFI at 15 amps. The other happens to be in my slide out in the bedroom, which is another 15 amps. I find by having a multiple setting, I'm allowed to, or I'm able to change the settings, depends on my electric need. In other words, if I'm running a toaster in the kitchen or a crock pot, I'll leave this on econo and my system will handle it. Or if I put it on high, it would pop the breakers. The second unit I use is a catalytic. Now, catalytic is slightly different. It produces a lot more heat at a quicker amount of time than the oil-filled. I use this in my bedroom. I put it up on where my TV normally is. I don't have a TV in my bedroom, and I close the curtain, and I keep it a nice warm 82 degrees. Again, this has a coil unit where that does not, but it has a catalytic almost like a shield in front of it, which keeps the coils, the red coils, from being directly touchable. So it is a safe unit, but not nearly as safe as the oil-filled. And between the two of them, if I have a 20s, 30 night and 60 days, my furnace will never go on. My furnace will only go on if it gets into the teens or better, so I do leave the furnace on. Next, we're going to talk about things you can do inside if it's a cold night. In other words, cold below freezing. You're in an area like Tennessee where the water will freeze, your water lines will freeze at night. Our technique for that is that if we know it's going to be below 32, we do one of several things. One is we make sure we don't turn our hot water heater off. We don't want that to freeze. Two is moving water does not freeze. It does if it gets cold enough, but in general, you're not going to be in any area with a trailer, it's going to freeze. So if it's below 30, like in the mid-20s, we'll open up the cabinet doors so hot air can get into the water lines and the sewer lines, and we'll dribble the water all night long at a slow stream, and this will keep your water lines from freezing. Now, we do take the strainers out so we don't accidentally have them pushed down and we flood our unit out. But it does manage to keep our water lines from freezing, and in the morning we will have fresh water. Now, I think we've covered everything I intend to cover, which is your different types of materials to insulate. Insulate your upper vents as best you can, your windows. Again, this is not going to keep you or keep the winter cold out. It's just going to make it a little more comfortable on the inside. I did think I forgot to mention that leave your shower door open also on these cold, below freezing nights, again, so it keeps your keeps the heat from, keeps the inside so it can actually touch your knobs and do a little bit of good there. This is Hughes from Outdoor Staycations. Please hit the bell, like us. Our next video we're going to go over is how to change the locks in your unit so it's more secure, and things you can do to keep somebody out of your trailer. Again, this is Hughes from Outdoor Staycations. Try and keep as warm as you can. Safe journeys.